All right, this is amazing. I was able to create an embedded chatbot support on my web page using just initn. And the workflow is quite simple, and we're gonna go over this. Let's just go through a quick example. I would like to get a tutorial for making an initn flow. So let's see if there's something that I can provide. Okay, so I just asked for a simple tutorial, that's it. And now it's going through, performing RAG, going into the context of my tutorials, my blog posts that I uploaded, and it gave me just that. Yep, and it tells you, how you can do this. And there's also like a couple tutorials, one for WhatsApp, one for VO3, and I want the links. Nice, and you can see over here, it gives you actually the tutorials, it gives you the Medium blog post. So let's see, does this work? And it does. It took me straight to the tutorial. This is amazing. So let's get into how this was set up and also what is RAG. When we think of solutions such as ChatGPT in the world of generative AI, we have actually a suite of solutions under the hood. You go here and type your question, but you know that sometimes what will happen is you'll actually be searching the web with the question that you have automatically, right? Because it kind of picks up on your needs. Then again, though, you may want to be analyzing certain images or documents that you send in, right? And this relies on a function called file search in a sense, but the technical term for it, properly speaking, is RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. And we want to be using that in order for us to reduce hallucination, right? Or to get specific answers from specific corpora of documents. And that's how we build intelligent chatbots that don't hallucinate this day and age. Let's go into how this works under the hood. In reality, when you input a document, such as this one, this is just like a piece of text that I have from a tutorial that I made on VO3 using initn. You will be chunking this. Basically, this means I'm going to split the text up into 2 or more chunks, depending on its length, based on the certain number of characters that this chunk can afford for, right? Whether it's 100 or 200, you determine that. And you'll often have an overlap, right? Such that if you were to, let's say, pick up a piece of text that precedes the chunking or maybe comes right after a chunking, you're able to connect the 2 documents together and then feed them back as an answer. And eventually what happens is this text is converted into numbers. So if you were to think of these words as each having like a certain space in a 3D space, then this is what we call an embedding. And a simple way to think about it is that, technically speaking, you can do this with any word. If the word red is the number 1, and if the word green is the number 2, what we've done is we've created a numerical representation and a very simple embedding in a one-dimensional space. But because there's so many languages out there, and there's so many words per language, we actually rely on hundreds or even sometimes thousands of dimensions in this embedding space. And the placement of these numbers, which is essentially words, right, just converted into numbers, depends on the tokenization, which is another way of saying, when I take a word, how do I split it up, right? If it's a really long word, right? And that depends on the tokenizer that you're using. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about this because all of the solutions we'll mention are managed and they handle this for us, right? So if I were to go through an example, then such as this one, right? I'm asking the following question: are there any automations for generative AI video? And you would pass it on to your AI agent, right? And the AI agent has, at its core, when it's well built, a prompt, a set of instructions that we've crafted, and then a model such as GPT 4.5 or Gemini 2.5 Pro, and then a memory such that if we were to ask another question that's similar, it would keep track of the prior conversation and maybe return some relevant context from the prior conversation forward. And what we're focusing on in this video, the vector store solution, right? Which comprises of, at this moment, of embeddings and reranking, right? And what do each of these do? We kind of talked about embeddings, right? So the embeddings would be used when you're, let's say, searching for the answers of a certain question. You would go to a certain space, right? So I'm looking for, YouTube automation or automations regarding video making, and it will zone in here, right? The re-ranking would come in later, and it would give me an order, a priority of what is the appropriate chunk to return. So while these are words right now, you can think of them also as being interchangeable with sentences and actually chunks. So previously, when we chunked over here, this is what we hope to get in return and will get in return by a RAG system. So let's go into running one really quickly. First, we need to set up our workflow. And we're going to start by setting up our database tables, followed by setting up the workflow for passing the PDF to the vector database. And then we'll focus on the RAG agent that's connected to specifically the Superbase vector store tool. Let's get going. So there are two crucial settings we need to configure before we go ahead and initiate our database. One is pretty simple. You just have to basically tell your database, we need the extension vector, because Superbase provides a vector store under PG vector. It's one of Postgres's amazing extensions. And the other thing we need to do is configure our dimensions for the vector. So here by default is at 1536, because I have this template that I'm using from another NetN creator who prefers to use OpenAI embeddings. But we're going to use 4096. And we're going to use 4096 because of the Cohere English version 2.0 embeddings. It just basically means the dimensions in this multi-dimensional vector space. All right, so we're going to go ahead and initiate the database. And the way we're going to do this is by first configuring our credentials that connect us to the database. And you go to any one of these three nodes, doesn't matter. And you're going to click, I already have credentials to one of my databases, but I'm going to create a new one to another one. And I'm going to call this the, okay. And I'm going to have to fill in these fields over here. So we're going to go to my Superbase and specifically the chatbot project I have under my account. And over here, you're going to ignore direct connection, ignore transaction puller. You're going to go to the bottom and you're going to go to the session puller. And you see here this information. You're going to be copying each one of these fields over. Okay, so I'm going to go and click on the host over here and paste it. Database, Postgres. I don't change it. It's going to stay the same. User is going to be actually this. Okay. And password, I have that stored and I'm pasting it in here. And we're ready. So I'm going to save and it should say successful. And it is successful. So the connection happened. And you can see I'm connected to my chatbot session tooler. And I do that for the other ones as well. So I'm going to select that and we're ready. So just to confirm with you, I'm going to go back to my project, chatbot, and we're going to go to the table editor. And you're going to see I have no documents yet, right? No tables that correspond to my database for the RAG. Now we're good to go ahead and execute the workflow. And it worked. So now we have them, and let's go back and go to our tables, and here they are. We have our documents, document rows, document metadata, and we're ready to go ahead and start putting files in our database. All right, and here we're going to set up the workflow for passing the PDF to the vector database. And we're going to start in reverse. So first we're going to start with our embeddings, and we want to configure the credentials here. So we're going to create a new credential, and we're going to go to our Cohere account and just get the API key. Just paste it over, and that's it. If you're wondering how to make an API key, it's quite simple. Just go to the website. I have a link in the description as well telling you how you would do it, okay? And next up, you want to connect to the database. So I'm going to create a new credential called chatbot Superbase account. And the host is going to be actually, as it tells you right here, right? So https your account superbase.co. And this is it. And in my case, I need also service role secret. Go to your API keys. You will reveal, but make sure you never share this with anybody because you can bypass row level security policies with this key. We have connected, and then we want to configure a certain file to download. So I'm making a chatbot that taps into the knowledge base of my creations, in particular the end-to-end automations that I've been making. So this is what I want to download, and I'm gonna go ahead and execute this workflow. All right, and here we are. It took place. What you can see here is that you have two rows. The reason being is because of chunking. Okay, so it chunked and it broke down the text into two sections. As for the final piece of this end-to-end workflow configuration, we need to get the RAG agent working. Really, this is like how we put everything together. This is gonna be how we chat and get responses, that is, right? And we're gonna start again in reverse. So nothing unusual here. It's really what we did earlier, right? This Over here is a Superbase vector store connected to a set of embeddings, procure embeddings specifically, and a Reranker. And the credentials are quite simple. You just connect to our API key. You just will select what you connected with earlier, and then you will do the same thing here for your embeddings. And when it comes to your Superbase vector store, you're gonna connect again with the credential we set up earlier. And we're also giving this a description because it's a tool ultimately. We call this use RAG to look up information in a knowledge base. And the query name is gonna be match documents because that's the query function that we created on Superbase. Okay, so it's one of the tools. Now over here as well, we're gonna connect with our chatbot session pooler. Okay, and do it here as well. Great. Save. So one thing I should have zoned in a bit further is that the table name here is _chat histories, which is another table we created. And this is all part of the workflow I'm providing to you for free. And the Open Router chat model is actually the inference provider. Okay, and it's very simple. You're just gonna connect by creating a set of new credentials, and we can do this really quickly. I'm just gonna create a new credential, and I'm gonna call this chatbot and then Open Router, and I'm gonna go to Open Router, and it's an amazing service. Like, they're doing so well, and they're providing a very clean service. You connect to any LLM you want, just with one API key. And I already have an account, but I'm just gonna go to keys, and I'm gonna create a new credential in seconds. Okay, so chatbot NNN, and as always, this is a key that you've seen, so I'll delete it afterwards. Make sure you never expose your keys. And here we go, save. And we're gonna keep it as GPT 4.1 mini. It's affordable, it's intelligent enough for our purpose. We can even probably go even cheaper, to be honest. And let's save what we've done. So the RAG AI agent over here has a set of 2 prompts. One, the user message, which is what comes from the chat function that we're going to talk about in a second. But then there's the system configuration, system message. And we tell it to be acting as a personal assistant to help answer questions from a corpus of documents, right? And here we are. So very simple. What we're going to do is we're going to open the chat, and we're going to say, in our case, hi, is there a workflow for making videos? And here it is. Yeah, it says that there's a workflow for making videos using Google's Video 3 video model available via file.ai. And if you did not believe this, let's go check it out. And here it is. And it pretty much goes verbatim, right? This is quite good. Let's see, is there a related YouTube tutorial? And it worked. So here we are. Actually, it's a tutorial for how to set up an NNN account, which is what I configured at the bottom of this document. It's not the tutorial to the actual video because I never provided it. So it performed as it should have. Okay, and the last step is quite simple. In order for us to create an NNN embedded chatbot on our website, we need this code to be attached on the layout of the website. You can use artificial intelligence to help you walk through. It's very simple. And another thing you need to do is to get your production webhook URL, which is quite simple. The way you do it is you go back to your chat receive node, and you're just gonna click, and you're gonna take this URL over here, and you're gonna make sure that the chat is publicly available and that it's embedded. Now, one thing to consider as well is that right now that anybody can send a message. It's best practice that you do have some sort of, let's say, rate limiting implemented, okay? And that requires another step, another sequence of steps that's not covered in this video, but you can reach out to me if you have any questions about that. And you want to customize your chatbot, right? You want to have like an initial message that is up on the top right that says, for example, hi there, my name is so-and-so, and you make some sort of compelling intro, and this is like the initial message that is sent by the chatbot when somebody is clicking on the chatbot. Okay, and that's it. So to summarize, we made a very basic RAG agent that is actually quite powerful. It has the ability of actually reading PDFs, vectorizing them, and then answering questions based on them, and then we're actually embedding this into our website. This is actually a pretty robust solution. We can obviously improve our pipeline, and this is going to be the context for our next video, in which I'm going to talk about how you can work with documents, you can work with images, you can work with tables, actually work with numbers, because you don't want to be doing RAG everywhere. You want to be doing other techniques that are RAG adjacent and don't rely necessarily only on embeddings. So we have to be very careful with when we use RAG and how we use RAG, and I'll be talking more about it in the next video. Thank you for watching.